Welcome back to the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage, everybody. I am making a video for you guys. This is sort of a follow-up to the purchasing series video I made on this Singer 403A. This, of course, is the mid-tier model of a three-model offering that Singer had in the late 1950s, 56, 57. Singer actually had many models they were selling, but they were all older models. This was their all new introduction models in the late 50s. And this would be one of the better zigzag sewing machine designs that Singer developed. Singer is most legendary for their straight stitch machines. Some of their early zigzag models were hit or miss in terms of people's accepting them. They weren't as popular as some of the other brands. The Italians brought zigzag into home sewing machines. They had been in industrial machines for a long time, and this was Singer's really big second attempt at a domestic zigzag machine and became very popular. And it's a good thing because Singer spent a fortune developing it. Now, I wanted to talk to you guys a little more today. It's kind of a more in-depth video about what you should look at and look for and try to estimate what it might cost you to repair before you buy. When I went and found this machine, it was being displayed outdoors. It was sanitized. We were observing very strict distancing rules, and I paid for it with an e-transfer. And I'm going through it, and I'm there, and I'm having to make decisions. You know, I don't have hours to fully go over the machine, so I have to make decisions about, okay, what does the machine need? What does it not? Is it an expensive thing or not? Is there a part needed? And when I start looking at things I think I'm going to have to deal with when I do the overhaul, you know, how much time, you know, am I looking at? And that's the toughest estimate to make. So if you are buying one of these machines and you've decided, well, I'm going to overhaul it and restore it, great, that's exciting. Or you may be saying to yourself, well, I'll have someone else do it. But regardless of what choice you make there, it's very important to have some idea so that when you go to decide, maybe you're going to make an offer. Maybe the listing price is very fair already. I've found machines where, gosh, you know, they were a good deal. And I was happy to get them at the price they were. And then sometimes they're overpriced. But if you're going to negotiate with someone on how much to pay for their machine, you need to give them specific reasons, and maybe they will reason with you or not. But it's worth a try. At least you know what you're getting into. It could be great, or it could be more time and effort than you want to spend. So we'll take a look here. This, of course, this machine has, it has some dust on it. It has soiling. It could be dirt, old oil, and or nicotine stains, because we had a lot more people in our culture smoking in the late 50s than we do today. I don't know for sure. The machine has no funny smells, but and we'll talk about smells later. And if you do have smells, one of the easiest ways to get rid of them is going to be part of the overhaul process. In any case, an easy thing to check, of course, is your bobbin winder. Now, this bobbin winder is one of my favorite designs. It's very simple. It flips up to use and flips down out of the way. This would have been used on your 301s and your 400 series machines. They changed the bobbin winder on the 500, which is essentially the same machine in a different body. But this, I really like this setup. It's probably my favorite bobbin winder setup. Well, when I lift this, there should be some resistance, and there is, right? Notice it doesn't flop when I pull it up. It sits in different places. That tells you that the spring is probably in good shape, and there is a spring that allows this bobbin winder to function the way it does. Now, I took off, and this was not a surprise. I could even see this. This is the bobbin winding tire that was on it, and I could see it had already started crumbling, and when I took it off, I don't know if you guys can see this, you'll see a little pile of rubber crumbs, right? That doesn't mean the machine was abused. It's very possible that this is the original bobbin tire. And rubber is not inert, right? It will dry rot, right? It starts to degrade. It's not really biodegrading, but it's crumbling, right? If I knew not even to try using this. It would just crumble and powder before my very eyes. But if you find a vintage sewing machine with a tire like this, if they're black, you really need to take them and squeeze them and look at them for those hairline cracks. This one is so obvious. I mean, you can see them. I don't even have to squeeze this. If I squeeze this, it would probably break. Let's try it just to see what happens. Right? Well, no, it didn't pop, but you can see it's just, it's just crumbling in my hand. So if you get one of those, don't let that be a deal breaker, because you can get replacements for these, and they are usually less than $1. You'll pay more to put them in the mail. You might occasionally find them in a sewing shop just because it's a Singer. But they're very inexpensive. It's very normal for this to happen. This can be a great machine, and it's an easy fix. So you don't want to turn down a machine for this, right? Even though you'll need to replace it. What else can we check out? Another important area, of course, is going to be the tension assembly. Let's zoom in for your tension dial. Now, whether your machine is so old that it doesn't even use a numbered dial, maybe it just has a tension discs here. But all sewing machines have tension assemblies of some kind that allows you to control the upper thread tension. So, first thing you want to look for is a check spring. All machines should have them. Some are easier to spot than others. The older the machine, the easier it is to see. Here is the check spring on the 403, and the check spring will typically be pushed against by the thread in this direction, right? It's going to be up, and that spring is bouncing back towards its stopping point, and it's adding tension to the thread, right? And that's a very healthy spring. Singer vintage springs are amazing. Sometimes they break, but it's amazing how I've had 100-year-old springs that still work. So if that's not a testament to quality, I don't know what is. Any case, if you need to replace the spring, maybe it's floppy, maybe it needs adjusting, or maybe it's broken, you can get replacements for these. Very inexpensive again. So again, not a deal breaker, but again, typically for old Singers, this is normally not an issue. The biggest problem I have is if someone has messed with the tension dial, whether it's an adult or a child, and sometimes they will have disassembled it or caused issues in some way where I have to go and fix that. Then I want to gently, very gently turn the knob, and it does turn, right? It's not the smoothest, but not a surprise. It could literally have been sitting for 20 or 30 years. Now, the person who sold me this machine said that they had allowed someone else to use it for sewing, and they said it sewed great. Well, when I start looking at this machine, I've seen enough of these I'm pretty sure that it hasn't. I don't know why they told me that. Maybe that's what they heard. Maybe it was an innocent statement. They just didn't know better, and that's okay. People do the best they can, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But whether they were being upfront or not is no matter. I can tell it. It has been sitting. It is one of these machines, guys. It really is asleep and has been dormant or asleep unused for many years. So that is something that I will be disassembling all of these pieces, cleaning them, lubricating them, and getting them back in order, because that will ensure that the tension assembly works as it should. It's a really important part of a machine. What else can we look at? You might want to look at the spool pins. Now, sometimes spool pins, whether they're metal or plastic, can go missing. This was in the late 50s. Singer went from a spring type of spool pin, which they had on their 301s. That's probably my favorite one because it bends and it's resistant to breaking. They didn't keep those. They decided that they would go with plastic. Now, I've talked to you guys many times about how it's important to go with all metal machines. But what I'm really referring to is the mechanical parts of the machine, the parts that get stressed where you don't want plastic. Spool pins are not really an issue. You may find one of these machines and the spool pins are broken or missing or they've snapped off. But that's okay. You can get replacements for these, in part because it's a Singer and so many of them were made. And in the past, I've had some break off in the lid, and there's a way to get them out. You can take a very small drill bit, and if you're careful, you can drill out the plastic that remains and get the hole open for the new plastic pin. These are tapped. There's no threads on these. You just tap them in gently. So again, an easy, inexpensive fix. You can get them on the internet. Don't let that be a deal breaker for you. Inexpensive and pretty easy to fix. You don't really need to be highly trained to do it. What else do we want to look at? Now, this sewing machine has multiple needle positions that Singer gave. This, by the way, the 400 series is one of the second big attempts that Singer made at Zigzag machines. Singer was slower in North America to bring out Zigzag. Their first Zigzag machines they sold initially, but they weren't the biggest selling, home runs that you associate with Singer. And so I think they went back to the drawing board and gave it another shot. And when they did, they came out with the 400 series, which were pretty amazing. They were state-of-the-art technology in 1956, 57. And Singer finally got a Zigzag machine design that the public responded to. They sold a ton of these, unlike their earlier machine models that were Zigzag. I think the 306 may have been one of those designs. You may have a 306 and love it, so I'm not knocking your machine. I'm just saying they were not as successful as these. Okay, now, as I mentioned before, when a machine is very complex, the more complex it is, the more time it may take. This is the mid-tier machine. It uses cams to do anything other than a straight stitch. The 404, which was the 400 machine below this one, it was cheaper. It was dedicated straight stitch. All machines require time and effort to overhaul if they are not just ready to go out of the box, and most vintage machines are not. The 401A, which was the one above this one, remember the 403, this model that I'm showing you is right in the middle price-wise and feature-wise. The 401A uses only a few cams for decorative stitches. Most of the designs are built in. That adds complexity. It adds time in overhaul. There are going to always be exceptions to this, guys, but I've just noticed over the years this has been, I can sort of predict, how that's going to go. What's up next? We can look at our levers. Now, this device is one that you push in. And again, just a quick reminder, I've mentioned this before. If a machine is new to you and something is not moving, try to get the manual. Because, for example, what if I were trying to push this up or down and do it in the center? That's because I would be mistaken. I would assume that that's what's happening. Never do that with a dial or a lever. Singer sewing machine manuals are free. You can get PDFs of them if you don't have the original. And if you don't understand how these work, the manual will show you. I know this because I know this particular model fairly well. So if I push in, now it moves, right? And I let go and it locks into place. Here it's showing left. Come down, right? Now notice the needle is not moving. Let's see, over here is a lever to actually control the width of your zigzag, okay? So if I try to move this, and I'm going very slowly, never go hard when you're just getting machine, right? Notice when I do this, I'm not seeing anything change here. This tells me this machine, and there are some other things telling me this machine is very dry. It needs cleaning and lubrication, okay? Now the needle's moving up and down, that's a good sign, right? So if I come here and it moves from the left to the middle, right? Even though I've got it on the widest zigzag, that means that it's not ready, right? There's something amiss. But again, that's not unusual for a zigzag machine. The zigzag feature on any vintage machine will freeze up before the straight stitch vertical motion of the needle, okay? Now, let's show you guys something else. All sewing machines have a way to attach the foot. See if I can get this out of the way. I want you guys to see this up close. So I'm looking at the machine, I'm checking it out, I'm trying to go as fast as I can. You don't have all day, I'm a stranger at someone's house, they're letting me see the machine. And what do I see? I see a bolt. I'm like, why is there a bolt here? There's a bolt because someone lost their thumb screw along the way. Now, if I'm fortunate, first of all, I'm going to put oil or maybe 3-in-1 penetrant on here. Let it soak because it's probably been sitting a while. And then I'm going to unscrew this, and then I'm going to come back with a Singer thumb screw. I have an extra for this. I keep some extras. And if it goes in, great, then I'm fortunate. If not, that means that this bolt has cross-threaded or messed up the threads in my pressure bar. And if that's the case, I'll come up with another solution. But I wasn't willing to abandon this machine because of this. But it's something to note, right? So you're looking at this machine, like how much do I want to pay? Okay, I got to address this, right? This. All of these things so far, at least in terms of parts, like the tire, $1. thumb screw I can get easily. I have not seen anything that tells me, oh, this is going to be expensive to replace. So, but we're not done yet. So let's keep going. Now, let's take a look at, let's see, we need this. This is our thread guide for bobbin winding. This is the lever that controls access to your feed dogs. Right now it shows down, which means that the feed dogs are down. Well, I'm sorry, that's not true. The plate, excuse me, the feed dog needle plate is down. That means you're ready to sew, right? If I come up, not much moved over here. This tells me I've got a lot of dry components that are really missing lubrication and cleaning. Now watch what happens when I go to unlock. It does bring them up, right? And this is the position you want when you're darning or doing free motion embroidery. You would also, I believe, have these up for buttonhole making, but I'll have to go back and check myself on that. So again, I'm moving these parts, but I'm doing it carefully, and if it doesn't give me resistance, I'll go ahead and try it that kind of tells me. So pretend you're me, you're looking at the machine. What are they asking for it? Okay, I know this needs work, okay? But that doesn't mean it's broke. Remember, we're so used to new consumer items breaking and being tossed in the garbage. This machine is way overdue for service. Now, one of the first things you do when you've got a machine is put your hand on the hand wheel and very slowly and gently turn to see if it moves. Okay, and it cooperated. Look at my take-up arm and my needle bar are moving. They're not moving really smoothly, but they're moving. But I'm feeling some vibration here in the hand wheel, which is where the gear interacts with the worm gear of the motor, and that's normal. But it feels as if there's not a lot of grease there, and I won't be surprised. We're going to open this puppy up, and we'll take a look inside. Okay, what else to say about this old girl? We'll go ahead and open up the top hatch here, guys. And I'm basically taking you along with me. And this is, like I say, what I do when I look at a machine, right? And I'm having to move fairly quickly when I'm looking at it, and I have to make a decision. Am I going to offer? Am I going to buy it at all? And I wasn't afraid of this, but again, I'm showing you things to look for, because you don't want to pay top dollar for a machine that you then have to spend a lot of hours overhauling or paying someone like myself to do that. Okay, so I take the lid up. The lid looks good to me. You can see here, there's all the little places where these are like little nibs that feed the oil downward. Nothing unusual there. And the hinge here works beautifully on the little hatch up top. So now I'm going to move the camera, if you guys will hold on for me, and we're going to take a look at what is underneath that lid. Okay, let's pretend we've got sort of the bird's eye view here, and you are looking at the insides of a Singer 403A, which will look different than if you had the 401A, right? The 401 is going to have a metal cam stack. It's got even more mechanicals going on here. Now, well, I'm going to look at something. Let's zoom in. Let's take a look at the worm gear, which is at the top of a Singer motor that is for this machine. Now watch what happens. I'm turning the hand wheel. Okay, that worm gear moves. That's good, right? But I don't know if you guys can see this, but I am here to tell you this is one dry machine. I see almost no grease, almost nothing here. I mean, it looks like it's gone a long time without any grease. And this powdery stuff here looks like it might even be old grease that's crystallized or dried out. Whatever it is, this machine is dry as a bone. And that's not unusual to find in a machine. This also tells me the machine has been sitting a while. Okay. Now, for this particular model, it was really important that I see this particular cam in here, because this cam is the cam. This is the cam that is numbered 0. It's a top hat cam. Top hat cams are not hard to find. They're all over this planet. Again, this is made from a black plastic, but it's perfectly fine, because you'll notice that the parts that are under stress, in this case, this is the cam follower, looks like a little finger, like a, and, you know, it follows along the pattern of the outside of the cam to create the stitch. But the cam, you know, is pushed on, but these cams rarely, if ever, break. You're more apt to drop it or step on it and break it than you are ever in the machine, as long as you remove it properly. I'm going to make a different video on how to use these cams, how to put them in right, and how not to mess them up. One of the things I like seeing is wiring in good shape, and I typically find that most often the wiring on the inside of these Slant-O-Matics is in pretty good shape. Now, you have to check every machine. You cannot assume that, and I never do. And I don't think you should ever assume that either. So, one of the things I'll be doing when I get around to overhauling this 403 is I'm going to take my vacuum and I'm going to vacuum out as much of this powdery goop as I can, and then I can take my cotton swabs and we'll clean up anything that I can't get with the vacuum. Most of it should come out. It's not a gooey, oily machine. It's very dry. In fact, I'm just going to take a guess. It could have been literally 40 years, right? That would be 1980 since anyone even touched this machine. Just guessing, but you know, it's pretty dry. That doesn't mean I shouldn't buy it. But again, okay, I know it needs oil and greasing depending on where we're talking about here, whether it's gears or just the moving parts. Okay, now I am going to now plug her in. I want you guys to hear something, okay? And many of you will listen to the machine with the cover on. So let's put it back on so we don't sort of compare apples to oranges. Okay, I'm not going to bolt it down yet, but here's the cover, and I'm going to plug the machine in, and we're going to take a look and we're going to listen to it. Okay, guys. So you noticed that I went and was doing some manual checking that the machine has movement, right? And if this machine was frozen, I would not try to run it electrically. Okay, that's going to strain the motor and it could damage parts, because remember, you know, it's like things are fused and they're not meant to. They're meant to work, you know, they're meant to move. If you try to force something, you can damage it no matter how well it's made. Okay. Let's see. Well, before I do that, just let me show you this. You'll see that the chrome knob here has a little bit of oxidizing, a few scratches of some sort. I don't know where they came from. I'll take metal polish to this and this will polish up just fine. That doesn't bother me a bit. I don't yet see many flakes or checks. I'm hoping that this paint will clean up beautifully when I'm done. All right, let's go back to what I was originally telling you we were going to do. So here is the original foot pedal, and just to show you how long Singer kept designs in production, this is 1956-57, and you know, this foot pedal design goes back, I think, to the late 30s. You know, so they, you know, Singer had something, they kept using it. This one is dark brown. You usually see them in black, brown, beige. You see the lighter colors in the 50s. This one's not, because some people had light colored floors. But this was done, again, it was all about camouflaging things and trying to make them blend in, which was a big deal. Now, for this model, just like with the Singer 301, you have two cords to plug in here. The first one I'll plug in is that for the foot pedal I just showed you. It has a cord, very high quality cord with brass ends. Needs to be cleaned up. I got a little dust here, but for this purpose, it's stuck on there at the moment. It'll be okay. I'm going to plug this in to the side. That's where this cord plugs in. So there's an outlet here, and this again is only for your foot pedal. Those of you who know this machine know this already. When Singer created the 500 version of this machine with the new body styling, they went to a different plug and they combined them, so you didn't have separate plugs. Who knows, maybe a customer complained, I don't know. So in order to get this working, okay, and so now I'll get the actual power cord. This is going to plug in here. And then this is, of course, the cord that, once it's in the machine, it then goes to your power source. I like to use electrical power strips with surge protector buttons, but that's how these cords are set up. That's how they work. Okay, now the first thing you can do to make sure you're getting electricity to the machine is check the light fixture. That's assuming that the bulb is not burned out. Sometimes that happens. And bulbs are easy to get for these and for most vintage machines. There it goes, the bulb works. We know we're getting power there, and even the bulb works. This model has a glass lens. Eventually Singer would go to plastic like all the others. All right, but what I really want you guys to pay attention to here, I'm going to do for you what I did after I'm basically going through steps I performed when I was looking at this machine before I bought it. And I'm kind of replicating them here to kind of let you know how my rationale works for what I'm checking on a machine and what you want to pay attention to and what's not a big deal. We already said bobbin winder tires, not a big deal. Okay, so the seller provided an extension cord outside and I was able to do this. Now I want you to, I'm just going to apply very slow pressure. I know that the needle moves, so I shouldn't be damaging anything there. But listen very closely to how this sounds. Now, the motors for these machines, and this is true of the 300, 400, 500, and on up, they have a different sound than other Singer motors. It's a different motor design. They normally have what I call a whirring turbine-like sound, but it shouldn't be that loud. But there's a little clicking, and typically when I hear that, it tells me that we've got a lot of gears in this machine that are missing grease, okay? And I will be taking the motor out and overhauling it as well. So, anyway, that again is one thing I want to notice. I'm not seeing or hearing any sparks. There's no smoke coming from it. And of course, before I plugged this in, I inspected the cord. I went all the way around, felt it with my fingers to make sure there are no cuts and no gashes. And then if I bend it, I can't make any cracks appear. If you can bend it, cracks appear. Or even if no cracks appear and you just bend it and you hear a snapping, if it feels dry rotted, then it probably is. So I use both visual and I also listen, right? Because even if I see no cracks here, if I bend, okay, and I don't mean abuse, you don't smash the cord, but if I bend the cord and I feel something crunch inside, it's still no good. It needs to be replaced. Cords for these are easy to get. They're not expensive. Again, but I definitely want to inspect this before I even plug it in, because I don't, if a cord is dry rotted and dangerous, I just don't use it. I won't plug it in to test the machine. I'll have to take my chance if I'm going to get the machine, get a new cord before I do that. So, so far, like I said, in the limited running you just heard, my foot pedal seems okay, my cords seem okay, and my motor seems okay. Okay, and this is a very cursory glance, right? So that is something that I went through this process. And again, just to reiterate, this is important. Before I used the cord and got the extension cord from the owner to test this, again, I looked at my cord. Always look here where the cord meets the plug, make sure it's not broken or cracked. And I followed it. Let's actually show you what I'm describing here. These places here, and where the plug is, where your plug goes into your power source. These are typically areas that get a lot of stress and a lot of bending. So check here, right? And then I take my hands, my fingers, between my finger and my thumb, and I follow it all the way, not letting go, until I have basically, kind of an odd thing to handle here. I basically do the entire cord. I do it and I'm feeling for any kind of gashes. Sometimes a cord is not dry rotted, but it can be damaged. Who knows? People walk on things, things get pinched or they get cut with a sharp object. You just never know. So anyway, I go through the whole cord, make sure it's okay, and then again, bend like this. And use a flashlight if you don't have enough light. And I've got sunlight here. I don't see any cracks. Now, when you bend it, you don't see any cracks. That's good. But remember, the outside covering can be good and the insulation inside the cord can be bad. So Do you hear any cracks? And then you have to very carefully try it and make sure it's okay. If you have any doubt, don't even plug it in to check out the machine before buying. I've bought machines before where the cord wasn't safe, and I just took a chance that the machine would work later with a new cord. So you have to decide that. Anyway, these are just all things you can do for any machine, and I'm using the 403 as a great example. New cords are easily gotten for these machines. They're not expensive. You can find them on the internet. Even some sewing machine stores still carry them. That's how many machines Singer sold. Okay, what else to show you guys? Let's turn. Let's look at the side. I open the door, and I see some dust bunnies, but nothing major. This, of course, is you're seeing the needle bar, the presser bar, and this door is normally it's held in when this top plate is screwed down, and then there's like a little tensioner that keeps it there. When I unbolted this door just wants to hang. Be extra careful that these hinges are in good shape. They can easily be broken if someone grabs the machine by the side, which you never do. You always grab it under here, like you're grabbing a puppy by the belly. 2 hands, but never on the sides. You can damage them. Okay, so what else to look at? Again, trying to look at as much as you can, or that the seller will allow you to look at. Depends on the seller's willingness to let you see the machine. This, of course, is the pan that a lot of Singers, a lot of the 300s, your featherweights will have these 300s, and all the Slantomatics. These are the drip pans, and they hold a piece of felt where oil, when you oil the machine, it will catch the oil. So this was something that Singer offered, and that took, I was able to get this thumb screw off, but it's been there a while. And we will see, I suspect we're going to see some greasy dust bunnies, which is what you often see with these. Yeah, it's about normal. And there's an easy way that these come off. In fact, this one's not really glued down, or the oil has softened the glue. I'll be removing this. I'm going to try to keep it all in one piece, though, because I'll use this as a template and get a replacement. You can get pre-made replacements for featherweights. I don't know if you can get them for these machines, but it doesn't matter. They're easy. You get a piece of felt and you can make one of these, and you just trace this old one and make a new one. But anyway, when this comes off, this is the main area where sewing machines often hold odor. I don't really smell anything on this one, but you will, because it's old oil, it's dirt in a piece of felt. So you'll want to get this off and replace it. And I'm going to do that anyway, even though this one doesn't stink like they sometimes can. Metal itself doesn't really absorb odors per se, but these little oil felts certainly do. Now, okay, and I think I'm going to show you all what I think is the cause of a lot of the excess noise. And this is one set of these beautiful Singer drivetrain gears, right? This is one of those, and I can put my finger here and nothing but a little bit of a black residue comes off. They're starved of grease, right? And so that's another reason not to run it. I just ran it a little bit just to hear it, make sure the motor was working, and then I stopped. Do not sew with a machine like this. You can hurt it. The machine deserves to be serviced before you start making requests of it. And here's the other set of gears right here, and they're equal. I don't even see any old grease. Sometimes you can see old dried out grease. I don't even see that. So this machine is definitely in need of some help. There's a lot of moving parts here we need to lubricate, but of course first we're going to get the dust out. I've started using a vacuum, my shop vac, to vacuum out some of the main dust. Then I can go back. You can see lint. This is just lint that's built up over time. Again, a lot of this stuff is normal. I'm showing you things. This is not like a worst case. This is kind of normal. So again, felt, a piece of felt is cheap and easy to trace. Nothing big here. The motor sits right there. This particular design is a lot easier to take out. I've showed that in past videos than some of the Singer's earlier motors. And so I'll be checking the motor out And this machine, like all of mine, will get a full overhaul. I haven't decided if this is my keeper. You guys know I often fawn over certain machines and say, hey, maybe I need to keep certain one. But I always say that, but I have yet to find a machine that I needed more than a sewer. I'm a machine geek, not really a master sewer. One other thing to check here, and this is true again of all machines, certainly of these, is you want to look and see that the rubber feet are in good shape. And what I'm seeing is, for the most part, they are. You can get replacements for these feet. You can get them for featherweights, 300, 400, and so forth. And if these were dry rotted and crumbling, sometimes they even start to dissolve and they look like somebody smashed old chewing gum or something. They can be taken out, and then these screws are used to hold in the new replacements, just as they hold in the original. So there you go. I'm not going to replace these because they look good and they're still soft and they're not crumbling, believe it or not. But I can get them. You can get them if you have to. And not to be totally forgotten, we want to inspect the bobbin area. So obviously you want to check in this area here. This of course is the bobbin case, and this is the 66 class or horizontal bobbin that's used. And this one still has a bobbin in it. That's pretty common. We'll have to see. It looks like more vintage bobbin. Now, when I turn this, I see, of course, the shuttle moving. Here's the little bobbin case that sits, right? It's going to need lubrication, but first it's got to be cleaned. And again, your machine, when you get it, you may have what I have here. I'll give you guys a zoom so you can see a little more clearly what we've got here. But here's, this is old lint, dust bunnies, right? Whoever used it last didn't clean out the lint. But this is a normal thing for any machine. Even new machines have this issue. You got to clean out the feed dog area. It's just lint accumulates from fabric and thread, and that's just kind of how it is. High quality threads don't do it as badly. But again, and I have other tools. I'm just pulling these big chunks out to show you. I'm not fully cleaning it here in the video, but you can see it's amazing. The machines still run under these conditions. The engineers knew this would happen. People would forget. But if you really want your machine to give you 100% of effort, you got to give it the service it's due. And so this is something you would do to a machine. Cleaning lint is something you do periodically, even when you have a machine that's in great shape. Okay, so I think we've covered most everything I wanted you guys to see. And the idea behind this is to say, okay, is this machine something I want to buy? Is it something that I am okay with fixing, right? So far, the only parts that I've got to replace on this machine is the little bobbin tire. And I am going to, based on what I did an assessment, I basically went through things that I went through when I bought it. I recreated that to show you guys, because I haven't started work on this machine yet. It's still just as I bought it. Still got its dust and dirt. But I wanted to kind of show you what I found. I was not afraid of any of this stuff. Now, once I get everything cleaned, you'll see dirt. I don't know how this, got dirt and dust, hiding over here. But this machine is in great need of cleaning and vacuuming, and then we've got to really get some lubrication. And then I've got to test to test this zigzag motion, right? I've got to be sure that the machine has been serviced so that it can perform all these wonderful stitches, because that's one of the great selling points of a Singer Slant-O-Matic 400. It has so many different stitches it can use, and as I talk more about the machine, I'll show those to you guys and show you how that is done. But I hope this was helpful for you. Again, this is really more detailed purchasing advice. So if someone says, hey, we got a Singer 403 and it was my grandma's, it ran great when she had it, and it's $300, well, I wouldn't pay that because I know that it needs time and effort, right? I wouldn't pay that whether you were going to keep it or you were going to restore it and sell it, whatever your thinking is. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't buy it, but the person might want to negotiate. And then you can say, well, I know I'll need to do the following. And if that person is reasonable, they may be willing to negotiate with you and come down on the price. And then you can agree, it depends on your budget. How badly do you want a 403? Maybe this was the same machine that your mama or your grandmama had. Maybe, or maybe not. Maybe you're like, well, I don't know, I heard it was good. People have different reasons for why they want machines and why they pay what they do. So when I look at a machine, typically, as long as it's a Singer or a Japanese machine and not a European brand, I typically don't get overly concerned about parts cost. Even if I have to replace certain parts, they usually can be found, and they are usually not very expensive. There are exceptions, but that was not my main concern. When I looked at this, I said, how much labor, how many hours will I spend on it? And we'll take it through, and I'll have to decide if I'm going to keep this for myself, because I am very, very inclined to keep this wonderful table that you guys keep hearing me go on and on and on about. I keep talking about this wonderful table that I showed when talking about this table design that I love. And it's not just aesthetics, because I love the aesthetics of all of them, but again, this table is a very clever design. It literally doubles in the surface area when you fold this back and up. And so I have to decide, do I want a 403 bad enough? Because I sure love this table. Anyway, thank you all for watching. This was a fairly long video, but I wanted to cover a lot of things here, things that you might want to consider. And again, I have to make decisions sometimes quickly, just like you guys do. Sometimes the person knows a lot about the machine and they'll talk to you about it and show it off to you, and it could be something they've been using and they've decided for whatever reason not to. Most of the time that's not the case, at least in my experience. What you often find are people who've been holding on to something a long time because it belonged to someone they loved, and it represented something. It was in a family, it was associated with a family, or the memories of someone in your family. And at some point people decide, okay, it's time to sell, or they donate it to a thrift shop. But in a thrift store, you might have a little bit more in terms of options of being able to look at the machine and inspect it. Some thrift stores will test them, and they'll label them tested works, but that's only on a basic level. You really need to go through some of the steps I went through here, just to show you, you may end up finding a machine that's much worse shape than this one, and you may buy it, but you don't want to give a ton of money. How much you should give really depends on your market. Are you buying it in a major urban metropolitan area, or are you out in the country where few people are willing to go in hunting machines? I'm different. I'll drive a long way if I'm interested in seeing a machine. But this is something that I hope is helpful to you. Again, I'm sort of sharing with you my own sort of mental calculus as to, do I want to buy it? How much is it going to cost in hours? I often look at that, and I chose to buy it. Right? I wasn't scared by the dirt and the dust, and it wasn't frozen, and I could not, at least at first glance, identify any electrical stuff that was an issue. You always inspect every machine. But thank you all for patiently watching my 43 plus minute video here. But this is one that is specific to those of you who are trying to figure out, should I buy? Is it okay? Am I paying a good price? What am I getting into? And hopefully that will help you when you are out hunting for vintage sewing machine bargains, or as I like to call them, rescues, because this machine needs rescuing. It needs a full overhaul, but then all of them do. Even if it was beautiful and shiny and sparkly, it still needs it. This machine is going to get it. It is one of Singer's last great all-metal, incredible machine designs, and it is definitely heirloom quality. I hope the machines you find are heirloom quality, and I hope that this is helpful, and hopefully you will be as fortunate as I have to find machines that are definitely worth your time and effort to restore and bring back once again. Thanks for watching, everyone.